is strategic change, because we promise them growth, sustainable, profitable growth. And as I'm very fond of saying, if you want new growth, you've got to do new things. You know, stupidity is defined as doing the same odd thing and expecting a different result. So I guess we are disproportionately focused on making big strategic changes.
But what I want to talk about, obviously, today is strategy. What is strategy? What do we mean by it? Strategy is a broad concept. It's quite a big way of thinking about the world in terms of it's the how we plan to achieve something, our overall aims. So Keynes used aggregate metrics and data sets to understand national and global economic performance. He looked at the world in a big way, and he looked at marketplaces. But he argued, crucially, that governments could intervene in the market to counteract market slumps, and they could do this through increased government expenditure and borrowing. This approach is replicated by advertisers when they do a macro communication model. So a macro communication model is created using aggregate metrics to understand an advertiser's overall performance. They use this to then intervene in the marketplace in a planned way to stimulate demand for a product. And you use macro communication instruments such as broadcast media, sponsorship, PR to generate mass fame. So if that's Keynes and macro models, what about micro models? So this is Hayek. He focuses on individual consumer decision-making in transactions. He rejects the premise that you can ever fully understand the dynamics of the marketplace. He argues that actually to try and plan and influence the marketplace through government spending is foolish. Not only is it detrimental, but actually intellectually he questions whether it's ever possible. So for Hayek, you can't plan, you can't understand, confidently know the outcomes of your actions. Digital media is increasingly embracing Hayekian principles. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is actually it means data informs all forms of advertising messaging, who to target, when, how, and what message. And yes, we've done that in the past, but this is now to a greater degree of intensity than we've ever seen before. And the investment in media spend is in some ways unplanned, because you actually have an algorithm driving decision-making which can only be realised with fast, real-time quality data.
The role of advertising in this particular space is not to sell. We're not selling anything. We're influencing. We're trying to create advocacy. Our target audience are people like prime ministers, presidents, energy ministers, Greenpeace, the media, Wall Street, the City of London. It's a very concentrated but very diverse set of influencers. If you think about Economist readers, they come from all sorts of places, but they're pretty, kind of powerful, and they have a kind of vested kind of common ground. That's who we're trying to talk to. All the big companies like Shell and Exxon and BP, they're rocking back. They're looking defensive. They're trying to justify why they've got these big profits and why the price of gas is going up. You've got to do something different. If you get caught in the crossfire, you will lose. You're number 4, and the public outcry will just push you off the radar. Don't even go there. We also said, and this is where we get into changing the dynamic in a serious way. Orthodoxy says, have a position, have a firm position. We said, do not have a firm position. Because in this particular environment, you're getting caricatured. Any position's being caricatured. The rules of advertising, keep it simple, keep it single-minded, keep it really clear, don't work here. Because we've got some of the most intelligent people in the world who are the publications we're going to be in. We don't want to dumb them down or patronise them. We want to, I guess, reward them. That's a rather strong word. But we want to engage with them in a way that befits their intellect. I did some focus groups amongst some of these energy elite in New York, and this freaked people out. We were in the middle of an election, and there were people banging the table saying, the world's got to hear about this, and some people saying, you're Machiavellian bastards, you're manipulating us. It was really, don't do advertising people like, do stuff which provokes and engages and stimulates.
We're in what I call a silent revolution, because it's a revolution in consumers' behaviour, that the smartphone, which only launched in 2007, has changed how everybody behaves. 75% of people have one, and my point is it's not a phone. We rarely make calls on them anymore. It's a mobile computer, and the speed and impact of it has been quite extraordinary. I don't know how many of you use WhatsApp. It's about 30% of the UK population, but I mean what it is an internet-based app messaging model. On the 1st of April last year, they transmitted 64 billion messages. I mean, you just think of the order of that. And this is a piece of technology that in 2009 didn't exist. So this has changed. The average user sends about 1,250 messages a month and receives double that amount back. So this is a complete shift in behavior. How do you predict what's going to happen? I mean, we've just, the Apple Watch has just launched. How important is it going to be? I can't tell you. The one thing I can tell you is it won't be a branding medium. Just under a third of the UK population have expressed an interest in having a smart watch, and they haven't even seen one yet. And it's very difficult because we don't know how people will use it. There'll be multiple versions. The other big problem with doing anything involved in technology is there isn't one thing you do. You need to develop for Android, it's got to be developed for iOS, there've got to be multiple platforms, and it becomes really difficult. The volumes that people will do will be low, and there's a massive risk of failure. Fundamentally, it's a remote control for a smartphone. So what it depends on is kind of what you're doing in that time. So the reality of it is it's about time, location, and what you're up to. So maybe you're trying to find somewhere you needed some urgent information for work, or somebody is trying to contact you, and you're quite happy to do that because it's about inboard messaging. But if I'm a brand and I try to interrupt you, that's a real issue. I don't want you to do that to me. So you've got to think about ways that make it work. And the whole thing that I keep on coming back to with the use of technology is we've got to think about consumers first, and we don't. We tend to think about the technology, what could we do? And that's why most apps fail. The kind of brands that will work are ones which probably are investing well at the moment. I mean, you might check your balance when you're shopping. How much money have I got in my bank account? Has my paycheck gone in yet? You might order your regular coffee on the way to Starbucks so you don't have to queue. What I'm starting to do there is think about the technology from a consumer perspective. I'm not thinking about it as what is possible. I'm thinking about what do people want, and there's a big shift. Most apps fail. Something like 90% of apps are only used once or twice. And the reason for that is they don't solve a need. They're there, they're quite fun, and then you ignore them. We've done a lot of work recently with using a reasonably new database called YouGov Profiles, which is done through digital. It's more current than, say, TGI, which you can actually do surveys up to the end of last week. So you could get information from last Sunday about what's going on. And it's quite flexible and intuitive. And what it will allow you to do is to understand consumer profiles and journeys and understand the key points of influence. Where are they changing? So we can actually start to create profiles and groups and insights into consumers rather than just measuring them. What we've done in digital media so far, which is measure reactions. What we've got to start now doing is understanding what they're doing. I think successful brands, the brands that are doing this, are realizing that technology has changed consumers' behavior but not their values. And that's important, that we are the same people, but we are different because of what we do. And therefore, the brands that mix old and new contact and provide choice and convenience will win. New technology is critical, but it's not an end in itself. And the key to unlocking it is understanding how consumers behave. So that was a sort of fairly random walk through some of my thoughts on what will happen potentially in the future. But I think the only thing which I'm certain of is people's adoption of technology is going to get faster and faster. So thank you.